Welcome to the How to Scale Commercial Real Estate Show. Whether you are an active or passive investor, we'll teach you how to scale your real estate investing business into something big.
Hey, Adam, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on, Sam.
Oh man, this is great. This is great. You've got a diverse background that I'm really excited to jump into here because we get to focus. A lot of times we hear either from deal sponsors or from partners in the industry, but you're somebody that's kind of taken the approach on all fronts. Like you've done. I don't even want to steal your thunder. So if you can kind of just give us an idea, the same question we ask everybody when they come on. Where'd you start? Where are you not now? And really, how'd you get there?
Yeah, very good question. Thank you so much. So I started really, I was influenced from my father. I'm very fortunate that my father, he started out investing in real estate. He was a dentist and he was able to do very well for himself because of his real estate investment. So as a little kid, I would always I was like a shadow. I was always watching what he was doing.
Sure.
He was always dabbling in different investments and stocks. And but the one thing he always told me is like, Adam, stay out of the stock market. You want to invest in number one investment is yourself, but real estate's what really helped him through build financial freedom.
Right.
And that's how I really got started. And naturally, he started investing with a company. I eventually worked for them when I was young, right out of college. And that influenced me to go for my master's in real estate property management at Drexel. And what's interesting is from that experience, I learned so much about financing, development, and private lending or hard money lending. My father actually, he got involved with hard money lending back then around 2011. And I was just like fascinated by it, so what was really, really the turning point of my career, I would say, was basically the Wall Street, the influx of Wall Street money coming into the market. Because originally we were just lending out our own capital to investors. I would invest a little bit with my father. We would lend directly to borrowers, or actually first we started out lending through this one company that would kind of broker the deal. And then we were introduced to a hard money lender and we started investing through fractionalized loans. And then the Wall Street money came in. And what ended up happening is that it became an interest rate competitive environment where they were charging, I think, 4 points and 14%, paying us 1 in 12. Okay.
Wow.
Then they're like, well, we have to reduce what we're going to pay our investors. And I looked at my father, I was like, well, you could lend directly. So what I learned was, okay, well, I'm going to learn how to underwrite these loans. I'm going to learn this. This is not rocket science to underwrite a loan for a residential fix and flip. And we developed relationships with some flippers and we had consistent deal flow. But then I'm like, there's more to this. I gotta figure out a way to scale this up because our capital is limited, and you have lenders that are doing like hundreds of millions, $100 million a year. I'm like, how are they doing this?
Right.
And I discovered there's a secondary market for these loans. You actually have buyers for these loans, or you could participate in loans with other institutional investors and I'm like, okay, well, I got to figure out how to do this, And I actually read an article, was something in, I forget the source, but it's talking about how they're securitizing these loans at the fix and flip mortgage bonds. I'm like, this is fascinating to me. And I'm trying to figure this out. And then I discovered a company, I reached out to them and I'm like, this is real. So now I'm like, okay, well, I need to figure out how am I going to put this together. I need the right partners.
Right.
So I reached out to a Arcad Group, which is a company that we were investing with. We were, we still invest with them, lend money to them. They were flipping houses for quite some time. And I reached out with this idea, just an idea to create a hard money lending company, which is the company now is Arcad Capital, been in business for 3 years. And it took off.
Oh, wow.
It's a success. Like we are one of the premier lenders in New Jersey. and we're growing. We have employees, this and that. So, that's how I really scaled up the business from there. Bringing on the right partnerships. Doing a lot of research, it's really something special what we put together. So that was my first big jump, and then later on, about last year, I opened up the private equity, Levine Capital, to basically allow investors to invest with us into the deals we're currently investing in. So that was my other way of scaling up.
So let me get this right. Just so I got the story straight. You have your capital group that is lending basically, it's not a hard money, but private money lender to fix and flippers on the single family residential side. Is that right?
Correct.
And then now you've opened Levine Capital that is now investing in what asset class?
So we're investing with a sponsor that is more an opportunistic sponsor, focused mainly on residential multifamily.
Okay.
Some condos, but 80% of the portfolio is multifamily.
Cool.
And the other asset class we're investing with another sponsor is SFRs, single family and small multifamily. And that's what we're focused on. We like residential a lot. In fact, we think that, if anything, there's distress now, but I think that later on down the road, there's just there's a lot of reasons for another podcast, but I think there's a huge demand for it already. We're becoming a renter nation, and it's easy to underwrite. This is investments that are easy to underwrite. It's easier than industrial, retail, office, hospitality. This is so, and it's working out for us.
Right. So you guys have taken, it more or less, you've made two companies. The second company is then investing in single family and small multifamily with another sponsor. And then you guys said, hey, you know what? We're making money at this. We could probably bring more capital to the table if we allowed other investors to come alongside us, invest in our firm as well. Is that right?
Correct. And 100%. And what I discovered is I didn't even realize this. I just figured it out just by just trying to make a deal, with this one sponsor that we're investing with. And I'm like, okay, well, how can you already have a lot of money invested in you, but how can I, create a fund that invests in your fund? So it's a fund of funds or a feeder fund.
Right. Sure.
And and that's what I learned. I learned that if you could commit more capital by investing, let's say as an institutional investor, you can make a better deal.
Right.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
With the sponsor, because you're committing more capital. So that's how I kind of like figured that out. And then I started reading. I'm like, oh, this is actually a real model. This is something that I didn't make anything up. This is something real. So there are funds of funds, feeder funds.
Sure.
And then if you look online, there's a lot of crowdfunding sites, but a lot of these crowdfunding sites they're brokers in a way.
In a sense. Yeah. I see a strong difference between crowdfunding sites and what you're doing. Talk to us a little bit about the conversations you had with the investors that are investing with you. Like, you had this idea, you cooked it up, you went to the sponsor, said, hey man, I bet we can cut better terms if I bring more money to the table. Because they may have the guy that put in $100,000 and they have a certain, they might have a certain equity split or preferred return. But you said, look, I'm gonna bring a lot more money to the table. So let's talk different terms. But even outside of that, then you come up with this idea and said we can do a fund of funds or a feeder model. But then how did you go out and bring other people in on the deal? Like, how did you structure that?
Yeah. Okay. Great question. So really, my first investor outside my father was really someone my father met, because he hangs around with other people like himself.
Sure.
That are, they're his age and they're wealthy individuals.
Right.
And really, that one investor, he invested through our fund. I showed him the fund. And what's interesting is there's this one, that same sponsor my father and him spoke at a dinner about this one sponsor. He actually invested directly with them. Then I opened up the fund. We spoke, and then all of a sudden I look on my online investor portal. I saw a commitment. I'm like, whoa, like this just came out of nowhere. And this is literally when I just opened up the fund.
Oh, wow.
And he went on my portal, invested, and then he invested more, and then he referred his son. But really it's relationships. If that makes sense. It was so a lot of it for me was a little bit easier because coming from my background where let's say my father, family, and friends, it's my apologies.
You're fine. It's what audio editing's for. It's all good.
Yeah. Give me a second.
No, you're fine. If you, sounds like Skype.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
You're all good.
Okay. So actually that was, one of the investors was calling me. I'll call him back. Yeah. So to go back, it's easier when you have a center of influence. If that makes sense.
Yep.
And then you could market online but the really investors that for me that worked out were the ones that were close.
Right.
And now I'm starting to trying to build the brand and so I could try to reach more investors outside of our center of influence. That's why I went the 506 C Reg D route for one of the funds.
Right.
So we could advertise,
Right. And how has that advertising been? I'm just curious if you're, and we don't have to get into, your strategy per se, but really what has been the response on more broad advertisement? Has that been worthwhile?
So we advertised, but we're kind of like a shotgun approach originally.
Right.
With kind of just advertising with no strategy. What I learned is that you need to have a strategy. So that's what we're working on right now. I don't have the secret sauce yet. But we have some ideas from some trainings that we've been studying and we're going to implement it this year. But really a few things I learned is that, I could, let's talk about, some things I learned, originally when I opened up the first fund, the minimum investment was 10,000 and my father thought I was crazy. My wife was like, and they were right.
Right.
Because what I learned and the smaller they are, the louder they are. And it's really true. Someone told me that and it's 100% true. So what I did was I raised the minimum investment. And it doesn't change anything because if you're trying to raise money from investors, you want to find investors that have money. So if you're chasing a $25,000 or $10,000 investor, that's the wrong avatar you have.
Correct. Right.
And another thing I learned was when you pitch a deal, that one investor may have $100,000 to invest, but now you're telling your minimum is 25. But guess what? You just cut your investment down to 25.
Right.
So that's a few things I learned through raising money.
Right.
I'm no expert at it, but I'm learning how to put it all together.
Right. So where did, and it just this not saying there's a right answer to this, but where did you guys land? Like what's a minimum investment for you now?
100,000 right now, but I'm probably going to raise it again because one of the funds I have is a 20 million raise.
Okay.
I raised it to 100,000, but then after that, I may just raise it, and then we're going to open up a new fund where it's 100,000, but I may just increase it again because it really I rather deal with investors that are more like, let's say that, how do I explain it? I'd rather deal with investors that are this has to be edited, but what I learned was that when raising money, let's say you want to raise, let's say 10 million or 20 million, if you want to raise little 25,000, that's a lot of people you're dealing with.
Right.
And that's a lot of phone calls, a lot of emails, and you're going to need a whole staff. I remember looking online at one company, they're advertising $500 minimum investment. I go on Google and they have every investor that's complaining is a $500 investor.
Right.
They're all complaining, you know. Grant Cardone, there's a lawsuit. The ones that are suing him are the $5,000 investors.
Jeez. Yeah.
So he raises minimum to 250. Right? You learned because
right.
You know,
well, that's it. I mean, even on the communication side, I mean, if you're raising $20 million and you got $250,000 investors, what is that? 80 investors versus if you had 100,000, what is that? 10 times 2, you got 200 investors at 100,000 a piece. I'd much rather deal with 80 people than 200. Right. And if you're going, I think, to those higher thresholds, it becomes a smaller and smaller part of their overall net worth. And so it becomes they're less worried about it, which is kind of counterintuitive, I would think. And you correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this is what you're saying is it that, you know, okay, so now it's 250, but they're a high net worth individual. That's going to be a lot less in their minds maybe than that $500 investor is to them, because maybe they only have 5,000 in their name in total. Yeah.
Well, yes. You're 100% right on that. And that's what someone told me is usually when it's a small amount, though, from my experience or from I don't mind the questions, but I realize, how am I going to scale this up and how am I going to keep my sanity if I'm going to have a lot of people? Like, I love helping people, but I just knew for myself and my own mental health and family that I need to raise it so I could. And then also another thing too is when think about it, your promo on a small investor, you're not making a lot. You're actually working for them.
Right.
You think about it, because you could spend a lot of time on the phone, email, and before you know it, you're working for them.
Right. Yeah. And that doesn't sound like any fun at all. Talk to us about the fund structure. Are these closed-end funds? Are they open-end funds or?
Yeah. So the Levine Capital Allocation Fund is an open-end investment vehicle with a sponsor it's an evergreen fund. So it's open.
Okay.
The other two ones they're small little funds that we just, the one sponsor had one fund that they opened closed end. Basically, we invested in two of their funds, and so I invited participants, people close to us, and that's it. We closed on that's it. You know,
right.
So to answer your question, to have one that's open and the other two are just closed.
Right. Which one do you find is easier for you to manage?
The one fund that is the open end, it's easier because it's a different type of structure with that one sponsor where it's very consistent. It's always the way we have it. It's just easier maybe for that. I wouldn't say an open end or closed end. I'm not talking in those terms what's easier, but from my experience with the one sponsor, that makes sense.
Right.
That the one strategy we're investing in, it's very easy to manage because the payments are always the same.
Right. Yeah,
5 years down the road, we'll have true ups and then we'll have to figure out the categories. But right now it's easy. The other sponsor, is more of a value add play. There is no cash flow in the beginning. So it's easy, but it's easier the way I structure it because we're not active. That makes sense. I mean, we're looking at numbers and this and that, but we're not the one sourcing deals and arranging the financing. We're not doing all the general partners work. If that makes sense.
Right. Yes, it does. Yes,
we make a promo off of the capital,
Got it.
And then obviously there's work on our end with bookkeeping. There's work on our end, a payment comes on the 15th for this one sponsor. So I have to go on the investor portal and authorize payments. And it's not a lot of work.
Right. No, that's great. Yeah. Adam, let's jump in here to the final four if we can. If you were to give one piece of advice to an aspiring investor, what would that one piece of advice be?
Invest in yourself. Study. I would, because for myself, what I learned was you have to your most important investments in yourself. I went to graduate school. Did I need to do that? No, but I wanted to do it because for myself.
Right.
I wanted to invest in myself, and it's paying off. The amount of knowledge that I learned a lot. I built a nice network, and it was something that it helped me understand real estate more. And then I'm reading books all the time. And then your network, you want to have a good network. I think that's very important. Maybe, masterminds are good. We create our own little mastermind. So I think a network is very powerful.
Right.
You want to help people too. I learned that by helping people, adding value, people naturally will return the favor. That makes sense.
It does. It does. Absolutely. And I think you may have answered question number 2, which is investing in yourself. What's one thing you're currently doing to stay on top of your game?
So one thing I'm doing is I'm constantly reading books. I'm constantly I signed up for this. It's crazy. I just signed up for this Wake Up Warrior Challenge. I saw an ad. He was talking about like having it all. What's his name? Gary White. I saw it. It hit a lot of mental triggers. I jumped into it because I'm married. We want to eventually have kids. So I want to improve my whole life. Life is not all about work. Because I know people that are very wealthy, but they're miserable people. They don't have a family. They don't have kids. They're white. They don't have. What's the point?
Right.
Right. So you need to have your health. You need to have your family. Have a wife. We want to have kids, and I want to build a nice life for us.
Sure.
So I don't want to say balance, maybe balance, but that's what I'm trying to improve in myself, because I'm good at working, but now I'm newly married. I need to improve that area and listen to people, but make sure you're listening to the right people.
Right.
Don't I've listened to people that you find out like they're not what they say they are. So you gotta be cautious with that. Make sure you're taking good advice.
Right. No, that's great. That's great. And when it comes to investing in the world, what's one thing you're doing to make the world a better place?
My wife and I, I'm Jewish, but we go to church. And I know we could be doing more, but we tithe, that's one thing I do. Sure. We're looking to do more help with like whatever it is. Like we'll do little stuff for the church, but we got to do more. I mean, eventually I wouldn't mind, becoming a professor later on just to help people.
Right.
This is little things we're doing, but we got to there's so much more we could be doing,
Sure.
What else do we do to make a better place? Honestly, that's a good question. There's more we could be doing. There's never enough. I think, we help our church out. I help out another church with this ministry, their social media stuff. But it's not enough. There's so much more we could be doing.
Right. No, that's good. I mean, hey, always keep the bar high. I mean, that's it doesn't matter what you're doing. There's always something else that you could be doing to give more. Adam, if our listeners want to get in touch with you, what's the best way to do that?
You could find me on our website, Levine Capital. My email, adam@levinecapital.com.
And Levine is spelled Levine.
Correct. Like the singer from Maroon 5, Adam Levine.
Gotcha. Okay, cool.
Or contact you, Sam,
Sure.
But I think I'm pretty easy to find. You Google Adam Levine, Levine Capital, you'll find me.
Gotcha.
LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube. We have a YouTube channel, Learn, Invest, Grow, which we're trying to grow that show. It's it's a new show that we launched, and we're actually hosting a webinar with RCN Capital this month to talk about the improvement of the capital markets for single family. So that is actually an interesting webinar that I think everybody should join. Gotcha. because people, like I said, are talking about how to scale up, go from single family to multifamily. But what a lot of investors don't realize is you could actually scale up single family, right? Because of the capital markets, you actually have financing available where you could buy portfolios of houses, right? And they have financing available if you want to build, if you want to buy, build, and then hold, you have that available. So we're going to be talking about that. There's a lot of different things. So you could, and then when you operate many of these houses, you're dealing with operational efficiency similar to multifamily.
Right. Yeah, I think that sounds like a fascinating webinar for our listeners to jump onto. as well as, get to your YouTube channel and see what you guys are putting out there. Adam, hey, thanks so much for your time today. I certainly appreciate it. It was a pleasure having you on.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.